Hi, everyone. Welcome to Tzu Chi Foundation's panel on Women in Government Leadership. I'm Joanna Zhang from Tzu Chi Foundation, coming to you live from Tzu Chi Center in New York City. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is our second panel for the Asian American Women Leaders series presented by Tzu Chi Foundation to celebrate Asian heritage, embrace diversity and inclusion, and inspire women and minority leadership. If you missed our first panel, I recommend that you check out the recording by clicking the link in the description section under this video. And for this evening, we are honored to have two highly accomplished Asian women leaders, Ms. Sandra An, Councilwoman-elect for New York City 20th City Council District, and Ms. Linda Sun, Deputy Chief of Staff to New York Governor Kathy Hochul. Both of them are immigrants, public servants, compassionate leaders, committed to address significant issues faced by women and minorities nowadays in our society. I'm super excited to hear from them their stories of their personal growth and professional growth. I hope you are with me too. Though I have prepared some questions myself, I highly encourage you to ask your questions by posting them in the live chat. We have reserved time near the end of the panel to address your questions. So without further ado, let's get started. First of all, I'd like to tell you a little bit more about Tzu Chi Foundation. Our founder, Master Chen Yan, also a female, an Asian, a leader who guides over 10 million volunteers worldwide, delivering humanitarian assistance with loving kindness to people in need around the globe and in our very community. Here is the video about the aid that our volunteers provided after Hurricane Ida in New York City. Let's watch.
The water just came rushing through.
Yeah, the flood soaked all the room, all the stuff, the furniture, computer, everything.
我的家里面什么都没了，床也没了，所有的衣服啊全泡在水里。我那时候一无所有啊，啃了一个面包，用那个水喝的，是邻居给我的。
So I lost my home, I lost my car. They made us evacuate. We went to a shelter, and then we've been here ever since. So I have to start all over.
Water took everything. Brand new car, my other car. I'm overwhelmed because I didn't know y'all was going to be here. Yes, but I thank y'all. Gave us some good stuff that we need.
Tzu Chi is giving out monetary support. Smaller family will receive $600. Bigger family will receive $1,000. We are giving them love, support, and they know that we're here, so they can come back to us.
They distribute us like $1,000 debit card. So we're gonna use this to buy the mattress, the bed, like rice cooker, for everything that we need.
But we thank you guys so much. We thank you for being here, for helping all the things you set up. And when you have nothing, anything is great.
When disaster happen, our Tzu Chi volunteer always the first come to the area which get impact, and then second, we have to do right away to give them the financial assistance and bring our love and the care to them.
我非常感谢慈济这个大家庭，感谢这些人对我的帮助。我到这儿来就像进入了一个大家庭，感谢到兄弟姐妹们对我的帮助。
Just a little bit of our Tzu Chi love to them is something they can use now, and maybe they'll still be able to feel the love from all of our Tzu Chi volunteers and everyone, so they'll know like, hey, there are people out there who care about us.
I thank you so much for all these loving, caring people to help me. I am in a down situation, but I'm looking up for your help. I thank you so much.
We all have the same love in our hearts. And great love is what brings us together.
As a teacher, I always talk about the importance of taking care of others and giving back and taking care of our earth. I'm blessed to be able to say that. I am a recipient of other people's giving and caring.
The recipients that we were helping, he showed us pictures of his house. The basement was all flooded. But what was really touching was at the end of our conversation, he wanted to volunteer. You know, when we're able to touch others' hearts, they also want to continue that ripple of love.
我觉得在慈济的话，对我们的帮助就像是黑暗中的烛火，是在我们生活比较最困难的时候，给了我们一点继续生活下去的，给我们看到继续生活下去的希望和光明吧。
Now let's welcome our distinguished speaker, Ms. Linda Sun and Ms. Sandra An. Hi, Linda. Hi, Sandra.
Hi, Joanna.
Hi, Joanna.
Hi, thank you so much for taking your time today to be with us and to share the experience. And hopefully together we can instill some inspirations into our audience. So Linda, let me turn to you first. As my fellow Teachers College, Columbia University alum, I see that you served as a Chief of Staff to New York State Assembly Member Grace Sun, then became Director of Asian American Affairs and Deputy Chief Diversity Office in the Office of New York State Governor. Then you were the Director of External Affairs for Global NY at Empire State Development. And now you are appointed as the Deputy Chief of Staff in New York State Executive Chamber. You are the highest appointed Asian American in the administration and a first generation immigrants. That's what an impressive journey. So can you please give us some examples of your personal and professional growth that have helped you to prepare you to assume a leadership role in the government?
Thanks so much again, Joanna, for having us here tonight. So I guess my personal journey into public service started with really my parents. I was, like my bio said, I was a first generation immigrant. I came to the country with my mom and dad when I was 5. And I think for a lot of new immigrant families, the children, once they come here, kind of become the adults, right? Because we end up learning the language faster and easier than our parents. We inevitably become, the adults in that relationship whether you have to go to the school to get forms filled out, you have to go to law offices to get applications, you have to run certain errands, whether you have to go to the pharmacy or the supermarket. So I guess from an early age, I helped my parents navigate, sort of mainstream society and play the translator for them. When I started college, I actually became an interpreter at the Community Affairs Division at NYPD. And right around the time, there was a really horrible incident that had happened in the community, in the Chinese American community. There was this horrible robbery where 2 perpetrators, because they wanted to steal a pair of sneakers, actually ended up killing a 16-year-old boy who was actually helping out at his parents' takeout restaurant. I believe it was in Brooklyn at the time. And because of the role sort of interning at NYPD at the time, we had developed a series of tips for personnel on sort of ways that they can protect themselves, how to keep in touch with the owners at the restaurant, so that they made sure that they ended up going home safely to their families every day. And I felt like from there, it was a sense of being able to give a voice to the community who many times are afraid to call the police, feel that there is a cultural barrier, there is a language barrier. And it just starts with, one simple task of reaching out and saying, okay, I speak the language. what can I do to help you and make sure that someone else on the other end understands what your needs are and how can we help you?
Thank you, Linda, for sharing your personal story with us. I believe many of the immigrants can really resonate with your story, and it's really our honor to have you here tonight. Then let me turn to you, Sandra, City Council woman-elect, also an alumni from Columbia University. So first of all, congratulations to you, Sandra, on winning the election for the 20th district and representing Flushing and Murray Hill. We know almost 70% of the population in Flushing are Asians, and we're really happy to have you, an Asian woman leader, to represent our community in the city council. So from your bio, I see you were born in Cambodia, raised in Taiwan, and lived in Flushing for many, many years. And after graduating from Columbia Law School, you first became an attorney at Dorsey and Whitney LLP, which is a for-profit law firm. And then you pivoted to nonprofit and committed to assist those impacted by domestic violence. Then you assumed several positions in the government, including Chief of Staff to former New York State Assembly member Jimmy Munn, the Special Assistant to New York State Commissioner on Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation, the Board of Managers of Flushing and YMCA, and Special Assistant to Congresswoman Grace Munn, and now City Woman-elect. So can you also share with us some examples of your personal and professional growth that may have helped you to assume leadership role in government today?
Sure. So thank you, Joanna, for me on. And I'm very honored here today to be with Linda's son, who I consider to be a tremendous friend. So just a little bit about who I am. Yes, I was born in Cambodia, and I'm Chinese descent. And just a quick history on Cambodia. There was a genocide in Cambodia because there was this dictator, Pol Pot, who decided to unfortunately do ethnic cleansing. My family and I actually escaped that genocide, and I made it to Taiwan. And then I came to United States when I was 7, and then I made it to Flushing since I was 10. I think based on that experience, I grew up, with a sense of knowing that, you always have to give back to your community, that, if you just let injustice stand, that, literally a whole community suffers, a whole country suffers. So I think I always grew up just knowing that because of the history that, this very painful history that, my family has. And like Linda says, most immigrant children who grow up in the United States, where English is not the first language for their parents, we are put in a position where we try to help, our parents navigate through this very complicated system. The government process, it's bureaucratic, right? And when English is not your first language, it's really a struggle. And I'll just speak to working with domestic violence survivors. I think that was my first time really truly understanding how when you really don't have a voice, how it impacts your life, literally physically. I talked to so many domestic violence survivors, and I work with mainly Asian American survivors and a lot Chinese survivors because I can speak Mandarin. That, I really saw firsthand how not being able to, call the police and not able to explain to the police when they come to your home and explain to them what happened to you because you don't have the language skill sets and the police doesn't have a language skill set. And because often when that happens, you're now put in a very bad position because you can't even explain to a police officer how your partner has physically hurt you. And, and then also, when we go to court, I did notice that, it takes a very long time for there to be a court interpreter. You would, you request for a court interpreter and you could wait there for half a day. You could wait there for a whole entire day. And, just like a court interpreter did be there so you could voice what happened to you to the judge. So those are just, incidences, like, I think that was the first time I realized how important it is, for people in our community to help each other and to speak up for each other when we can.
Thank you so much, Sandra, for sharing this special experience with us. And it's also our great honor to have you here today. So coming back to women in government leadership, and we're so happy to see more than 24 women, including you, Sandra, made history by becoming the majority now in New York City Council next year. However, only 27.6 US House of Representatives are women, and that number is 24% in the Congress. And also, according to the report from UN Women, globally, only 21% of government ministers are women. So I'm curious to hear from both of you, drawing from your experience, what kind of special, unique, underappreciated or underplayed attributes that you have seen in female leaders, maybe also particularly addressing to Asian female leaders that you have seen and you like to tell them, future female leaders in the government or in the world, so that they can turn those attributes into their strength and to turn on their volume and have their voice heard and eventually break that glass ceiling as you did. Either one of you like to go first?
I'll just take it since since I'm on. So I think, Joanna, you're pointing to something, and I'll just take your question in a broader sense. There is a lack of women representation in government. I think sometimes that stems from, and I know I could speak for personal experience when I wanted to run for office, where not to do it. And I'll say it in a way where I think most women can understand. So when, we see a job posting, right? I know a lot of my friends and I will look at that job posting, and my girlfriends would go, "Oh, do you think I'm qualified? Do you think I have all the skill sets of this job requirement?" And we'll talk for hours and hours, and we'll like encourage her and say, "Oh, you could do it. You could definitely do it, right? You definitely are qualified." While my male friends, I could tell you, they probably don't even have those skill sets for a job description, and they would go, "Yeah, I'm definitely applying for this job. I think I'm going to get it." And then I'm looking at them like, okay, well, that's really like a really different perspective of how we view ourselves. So I think one of the most important things is through my campaign experience is that we really do need more women mentorship, more women role models to give us the confidence and also the roadmap. It's very not easy to do something when a lot of people have not done it. And and it's also, you need someone, you need to look at someone and say, hey, this person did it, and this is this person who's a mother who can have children. She was able to do it, so I can also do it. And I just think more and more the last few years, especially when I think about someone who I consider my mentor and friend, the Congresswoman Grace Meng, looking at someone like her get elected and been such a strong advocate for the community gives me the confidence to say, like, if she could do it, I could do it too. And she has been, she provided me a great mentorship to help me along my path, because sometimes, you're on this path, it's not an easy path, but you need, like, when you have questions, you don't know who to go to. So I think that's really helpful. And I also say it for another, not even in government. So, I'm also a while back, also was on the board of the Asian American Bar Association, where we talk a lot about the glass ceiling or the bamboo ceiling. And it's also we also think that's also just also lack of mentorship, because if you don't see partners who are women, who are Asian American, it's very hard to know how to become a partner when there isn't someone to pull you up and say, this is what you need to do, and I'm going to help you do it. So I'm just going to leave my remarks there.
Right. I can agree with you more about the need for confidence in female leaders, and then also the need for mentorship to help the women become the future leaders. And I wonder, if you have heard about a term called feminine leadership instead of female leadership? It represents a collection of traits that can be practiced by anyone, not just females, but anyone, such as compassion and mindfulness and kindness and active listening and etc. So now I wonder, through your experience, your professional growth, how do you see those traits or how do you practice and exhibit those traits that help you break that glass ceiling?
Sure, no, I agree with that. I also say, as a woman leader, that I hope, like you said, next city council, we're gonna have a majority of women. And this is how I do believe we're different in some ways. I believe when a woman work together with other women, you could say it doesn't have to be women. It's like you said just before, feminine leadership. It's a skill set that's involved. I think we like to work together in collaboration. We like to help each other and believing that when we help each other, the whole community can win. I feel like in some other models, when a lot of people feel in order for me to win, you have to lose. And I think I feel like that's always been the model for many leaders and communities. Maybe I don't think that's necessary. I don't think you need to go head to head against somebody, or to be in disagreement. In order for there to be a good resolution. So I do believe in what you said, like active learning, being compassionate, working together, try to find a solution that actually can be a win-win for everybody involved in the room.
I feel like hearing from you is like hearing from a real powerful, passionate, compassionate leader, promoting for that win-win situation, collaboration, helping each other. So now I'd like to zoom out from the specific group, which is Asian women leader, to a more general topic, which we're sort of touched upon a little bit, that is diversity and inclusion. And diversity and inclusion is a big topic today, yesterday, in recent years. And this morning I was reading an article from New York Times. It says Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders are actually the farthest growing demographic, but they account for less than 1% of all elected leaders in the government. And I think the same situation applied to business world. And as you mentioned before, apply to lawyers in all the different areas in the society. And I think I've talked to a lot of my friends before this panel, and many of them have told me they have experienced similar kind of struggle at work and in life. So I wonder, I'm so curious to hear from you that how do you define diversity and inclusion? And could you please also give some examples of the ways in which you are working to dispel the notion that diversity and inclusion is a threat, which it's not, but convince the naysayers that there is great value in increased diversity and inclusion? Hi, Linda. Welcome back. I heard that question. I'm sorry. I was just talking about the question on diversity and inclusion. I wonder if you have heard the whole question. And
yeah, I heard the question. So I actually served as New York State's Deputy Chief Diversity Officer. And then as the Chief Diversity Officer for the Department of Financial Services. So the Department of Financial Services is the agency that provides oversight for all of the health insurance companies and banks here in New York State. So when I was the Deputy Chief Diversity Officer for the state, I think, when people say diversity and inclusion, I think everybody agrees, or most people generally agree that it's a good thing, right? But I think right now we also need to bring in the word equity, right? Diversity is when you say that there's, many different types of people with different backgrounds and they're all, invited to the table. Inclusion is when, we include all of their ideas. But equity is when we make sure that all of the people who are at the table have equal access to making sure that their ideas and their thoughts are heard. And unfortunately, I think some of the statistics that you quoted is that we don't have that much leadership or representation of Asian Americans in, the corporate world, the government field, right? And it's to the point that Sandra had talked about, just we don't necessarily see people who look like us. I certainly know when I was growing up, my mom, wanted me to be a lawyer or a doctor or an accountant, and never thought that I would go into public service or, be in government, because I don't think she understood what government was, right? And I think for most Asian American children, when they're growing up, the first sort of career advice or just conversations happening around you come from your family and your friends, a lot of times from your parents. And I think Asian American parents want their kids to be successful, but for government, it's just not something that's ever talked about. So I feel like for both Sandra and myself, it's something that we kind of stumbled across ourselves because we wanted to help people. We wanted to make a difference. We wanted to make sure that the simplest task of helping someone interpret a letter will go a long way in making a difference in someone else's life. So at the state, we created this program called Adapt, and it's basically making sure that there is one person at every single state agency that answers directly to the commissioner or the highest person in that particular agency that makes diversity and inclusion and equity a top priority. That means that when you're hiring, right, if there's 10 candidates, there's somebody who says, well, where's the diverse candidate? You can't come to me and say, oh, all 10 candidates are from the same background. They're all the same ethnicity. They all have the same backgrounds, right? Where there has to be other ways that you're bringing diverse candidates to the table. If there's 10 candidates, there should be at least 5 people in that pool who also happen to be diverse candidates. It's making sure that when we're advertising for jobs in state government, we're not going about it with, LinkedIn, right? Or just depending on mainstream, websites or newspapers. Our community, I know my parents did not grow up reading the New York Times. They don't read the Daily News, but they do read World Journal, right? We need to make sure that we're advertising and sharing information about what careers are like in government, in ethnic media, right? We're sharing it with our community stakeholders, our local elected officials, so that there is information and access out there, that they understand what a career in public service means. So that's something that we did at the state level. When I went to an agency and I ended up at the Department of Financial Services, I think a lot of times our minority staffers and employees feel very disconnected from leadership. So we created what we called affinity groups. And so we created employee resource groups sort of centered around Asian Americans, South Asian Americans, LGBTQ community, African Americans, women in leadership. And we assigned one top leadership senior staff person to each of these employee resource groups, so that if the people at the mid-level or lower levels of the agency had a complaint, they had a direct access to someone in leadership who understood what it is they wanted, right? They needed more promotional roles. They felt like they weren't being heard by the senior levels of leadership. And that particular person can bring these concerns and asks and questions right back to the head of this agency, who can then pass on the message directly to the governor. So I think there are sometimes people feel like they're not being heard because they don't know who to go to when they have a complaint. And it's just making sure that when we're talking about diversity and inclusion and equity, people feel like there's someone for them to talk to who not only looks like them, but understands like where they're coming from because they're of the same background.
Thank you so much, Linda. It's really hopeful and inspiring to hear what you have just said. There are actually a lot of things being done to help embrace the diversity, equity, and inclusion, and to harvest the value of inclusion together in the society. And going to Sandra, I mean, you are also like now representing one of the most diverse districts in New York City. Anything on your agenda, anything that you have done or you hope to do and to promote diversity and inclusion?
I mean, one of the things that I campaigned on very hard when we talk about diversity and inclusion, and I think Linda said this, is that we have to reach out to the different groups. I'll just say in my community, right? So when I campaigned, I literally had all my campaign literature was in, like, I have 4 different languages. because I think it's important to, communicate to your group in the language that they understand. I mean, it's nice to say diversity and inclusion, but when you don't communicate, to the community that you represent in the language that they understand, it's very, very hard to really say that and really mean that. And also encourage, honestly, when other, people, other potential candidates or elected official ask me, like, what can I do for your community, right? How can we, how can we be more, inclusive of community? And actually, the number one thing I say to them was like, well, have you reached out to them actually in the language that they do understand? And it's not even a language. Like I think Linda, touched on this too. It's all about the ethnic media. It's all about using the social media platform that we know, right? So it's like, so for anyone who asks me these questions, I think it's really to really understand the community. You really have to reach out to them in a way that they know how you're reaching out to them.
Right. Thank you so much, Sandra. So Linda, are you still there? And I wanted to go back to the previous question to hear more from you again about the female leadership, like what are the unique underappreciated attributes that you see in female leaders from your experience that you hope we can harvest more for future female leaders to break that glass ceiling?
I feel like it's something that, Sandra and yourself have already sort of touched upon, is that we need to see people in office who look like us, right? I mean, if you take a look at how long New York State government has been around, it's taken 56 governors before we have a, historic first female governor in the history of New York State. And I think right off the bat, she has made us feel like she cares about the community and she cares about the people who work around her. And I feel that, just the last couple of months that I have been a part of her administration, I feel like she sees us and she hears us. And she likes to say that she sort of governs with a velvet glove, because she is strong and tough and forceful when she needs to be, but she also understands the value of collaboration, of communication, which I think is a skill that women sometimes don't give themselves enough credit for, right? Something that Sandra mentioned is that men are, born with this natural ability to be overly confident, whereas women feel like they need to stack their resume with 10 different tasks and abilities before they feel confident enough to apply for a position, to raise their hand and say, well, I have a really good idea and I think I know the solution to this problem. But being in the office now, our current governor has surrounded herself all with very strong female role models, right? The secretary to the governor is a female. The general counsel to the governor is a female. Her state ops director, who oversees all of the state agencies, is a female. And both of her deputy chief of staffs are female. There are minorities who are brought to the table and given the opportunity to share their points of view when something like that probably has never happened before. And for myself, as well as Sandra, we both consider Congresswoman Grace Meng to be an amazing, friend as well as mentor, because I got my start in, sort of government and politics because of her. I joined her campaign, back in 2008, and was able to sort of work hand in hand with the community to understand what it is that the community needs in terms of money, in terms of resources, in terms of assistance. And just, and I feel like something like COVID, right? Which is, I feel like just a part of everybody's daily life now. Back, I feel like, was it 2 days ago, right? The first person got their COVID vaccine in the country, sort of in the entire United States. And it was a nurse here in New York State. And when the state first started setting up pop-up community sites to do these COVID vaccines, it was something that we had only focused on, for the African American community, for the Latino community, because they have always experienced levels of vaccine hesitancy. And because I was able to work with a community groups such as Kaipa, such as Tzu Chi, we were able to bring, these pop-up community vaccine sites to Flushing, to Chinatown, to Sunset Park. And it was because we have people in leadership roles, such as the governor, who understand and who are listening and who care about the community.
Thank you so much for giving more examples of female leadership, and then that definitely intertwined with the promotion for diversity, equity, and inclusion in society. And like to say, in my opinion, I think creating a more inclusive society is everyone's responsibility as a member of the community. And so that leads to my next question to you, both of you, is what overarching message you would like to deliver to our audience today, who could be part of many diverse groups in New York City and also throughout the country. So from your perspective, what do you think can ordinary citizen do to create such an inclusive society that all of us want?
Sandra, do you want to take the question?
I'll go first. When civic engagement is something I really have just tried to encourage, all communities, especially underrepresented communities, to take part of. And when I say civic engagement, people say, but I was like, it doesn't mean you have to go and run for office. But that's not, when I say that, I don't mean that, but I say there's so many ways you can be involved in your community to better your community that you don't even need to run for office. For example, I guarantee you, anyone who lives anywhere, even in New York City, there's a community board you could join. There's probably a tenant association you can join. If you're a professional, like I just mentioned, I was part of the Asian American Bar Association. And like Linda says, there's a lot of affinity groups out there in a private corporation. There's also a lot of not-for-profits out there who probably do need some help. And the help can be, it could be a very small not-for-profit. Maybe it's like a 2-person not-for-profit. They probably could use some sort of, sometimes free legal help. Maybe they could use some business help. Maybe they could use some accounting help. And these are the not-for-profits out there who really honestly are out there helping the community. These are just a couple of things I suggest people to think about, that everybody could always give back to their community in whatever time that they have. And don't think like, oh, I don't have enough time, there won't be enough, like I don't know enough, I don't know what to do. I generally believe even like a park cleanup, there's always a park cleanup every weekend somewhere in your neighborhood. And I think just being out there, and also for parents, I think if you do that, and sometimes you bring your kids along to do some activity, I think it actually also instills in the children's, like kids growing up thinking, I should give back to my community, whether that's giving back to the community, like I said, in a civic way, or it's giving back community by helping the neighbors out. I know Shuzi was involved in a lot of food distributions. I was encouraged people, they could, volunteer for that and set a good example for their children, for their neighbors and their community, that giving back is so important.
I'm really grateful to hear you say that about giving back to the society, the power of volunteering. And I actually haven't heard about community boards, so that's something that I definitely want to check out after this call myself as well. And what about you, Linda? What kind of message would you like to give to our audience?
I think what Sandra said, you don't have to run for office, but you should definitely vote. And I think that's the best sort of way that we can demonstrate or exercise our civic duty and power. I think a lot of elected officials have said, our community leaders have said it, is that you don't get to complain if you didn't vote, right? Because you didn't take the opportunity to make sure that your local elected officials heard your voice and know what you want and what type of future you want for your community, for your neighborhood, for your backyard. So I feel like I would definitely encourage everyone not only to get involved in, you know, your local community board, your school board, a nonprofit organization, but when there is a local election in your neighborhood, is to do some research, find out and learn about the candidates who are running for office, and make sure that you go out there and you vote. You know, the sort of the Board of Elections does not record or have information on who you voted for, but they do have information on who voted, right? How many percentage of Asian Americans voted. And that is something that is used over and over again when city governments, local governments, state governments divvy up and allocate, you know, state resources, city resources. So that is the best way to make sure that your government knows that you exist and these are the issues that you care about, whether it's public safety, whether it's small business development, economic development, educational resources, is to take that opportunity and to go to the ballot and put in your vote and exercise that right.
Thank you so much. Those are two very impactful advice or message. One is engagement, the other is vote. So now we have some questions coming from the audience, and hopefully Linda and Sandra can share more of your thoughts to address those questions. So, right, the first question is coming from Liven Chen. She'd like to ask both of you, as a female Asian leader, what was the biggest challenge or challenges that you needed to overcome to achieve your positions?
I can start. I think my biggest challenge was just overcoming my shyness, right? And this is probably true or typical of a lot of Asian American children, is that from a very young age, we're taught to be quiet, to be obedient, to not ask questions, to not voice our opinions about anything. And I realized that, you know, the sort of the saying that the squeaky wheel gets the oil is actually very true. And so I think it took a lot for me to kind of overcome my personal sort of shyness and just the way that I am as a person, to raise my hand and not be afraid of voicing what my concerns are, voicing what my opinions are, to disagree with someone when I feel like they're not representing what I think our community needs, and standing your ground and asking questions, because the more you ask questions, I think the more other people start to engage you and start to come to you when they want to know how you feel about something. If you never say anything, people start to take you, I think, for granted and start ignoring what you have to offer to a solution, to a problem, to a policy design. And so I think I would encourage everyone is to not be shy, just to overcome that initial fear of thinking that no one cares what you have to say, because what you have to say and what you have to offer is very important, because you do bring a very valued voice and opinion to the table.
Thank you so much. That's a very personal sharing, and I personally resonate with you as well. A lot of Asian American girls, boys, both, I mean, there's a little bit shyness in our personality sometimes, and it's took a lot of like courage to raise our voice. It's a really good advice for everyone, all of the audience. What about Sandra?
Sure. So I'll pick you back a little bit what Linda said. So during this campaign, a lot of people said, you know, obviously I'm Asian female. Well, she's a nice girl. That was really just the general feeling of, you know, wow, she's nice, right? And I think the challenge for me was overcoming the perception that, just because I'm not always there the first to scream the loudest, I'm, like Linda says, working on, speaking, when I feel something needs to be said. I think there's also, but overcoming the stereotype that people have of Asian females is that, well, they're nice, right? They're nice, they are good at doing what they are told to do, but maybe they don't have leadership skills. And I think that's something that, as Asian American females, that, especially going back to what you said earlier, that whoever Asian woman female in leadership, I mean, we are setting the example of how we can be leaders. And it doesn't have to be a leadership role that, Joanna was just saying, that you don't have to scream the loudest. You don't have to be the first one to raise your hand, everything. But there are skill sets that I think, all women have that actually could, that proves, I think, throughout time that it's going to be, that's going to be leadership, assets.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you, Linda. So next question is coming from Annie Chu. So she wanted to seek your advice to all the minority leaders who wish to become or play a major role in the government session. What's your best advice to help them to prepare?
I think you start with an internship. You find an amazing candidate like Sandra, right, who's going to be our city councilwoman in just a few weeks. And you march yourself, I think, to her office and you say, I want to volunteer. I want to get involved. I want to learn about this community. I want to know what the parents feel, what the seniors feel, what the students feel. I know I interned when I was in college. I'm pretty sure Sandra did as well. And that is the first opportunity and the best learning experience, to be on the ground and kind of being like the eyes and the ears of any elected official, because you're dealing day to day with the constituents who need, your help, and they need the services, and they're telling you exactly what it is that they need. And I think that really broadens your horizon, and it teaches you all the skills that, we talked about, which is, how to communicate effectively, right? How to stand up for yourself, how to think on your feet. So I would encourage anyone who's interested to get involved by just, going to any local elected official's office and saying, I want to help out. I want to be an intern in your office. I would appreciate the opportunity to learn from you.
Thank you, Linda. Sandra, anything to share?
Sure. So, next year, if you're in New York State, it's actually a very, very exciting year. There is a lot of competitive state elections going on. So, with what Linda says, if you want to be involved, it's a great opportunity. Campaigns are always looking, truthfully, for help, for free help. Frankly said. So, Linda's working for a great governor. I know she's gonna, run for election next year. And there's a lot of actually local, state, and Senate races next year. And like Linda said, it's actually just a very good opportunity to, just, understand the community's issues between your campaign. You really start to understand the community issues like really well. And for everybody out there who has bilingual skill sets, it's great. It's also great to help on a campaign because, if you want to, like the campaign to be responsive to a community needs, it's really great to have someone who's bilingual. And you also, again, will through that experience, understand the campaign's needs. And also, like Linda says, you go out, you're going to talk to strangers. You might not want to talk to strangers, but you're going to be knocking on strange people's doors. You're going to be calling strange people on their phone. And I think that's just a really great experience to get you out of the shell if shyness, which I think is something, frankly speaking, like, I have issues too, like, to get over. So I think that, just, all things, good. And then actually, you don't have to wait for next year. You could just, after the Zoom tonight, just go check out the campaign.
I know, sign up now.
Exactly. You can sign
exactly.
up right now. I guarantee you. They're looking for volunteers right now as we speak.
I'm sure after today's Zoom, you'll get a lot of calls and then lots of sign up. So thanks so much for those critical advice. Next question we have is from Dahi Sanamara, and she wanted to hear from you guys how, the question is, how do we fight the biased criticism? And a follow-up question is, how can we better curate the message that female professionals are being promoted to be a leadership position because of our qualification, but not just to boost the DEI ratio?
The bias question, is that like the anti-Asian bias or sort of bias in general?
I think her two questions are linked. So her question is, how do we curate the message for female professionals being promoted, not because of the DI ratio, but because of their qualification? While right now there's some criticism about some female being promoted, it's because of the DI ratio, not because of the qualification.
Well, I mean, for me, I think it comes down to something that we've all mentioned and talked about, is that women always feel that they're not qualified enough, right? That we always feel that we need to go, you know, an extra mile, an extra 2 miles, an extra 5 miles to prove that we deserve the promotion, we deserve the leadership role, we deserve the raise, whichever it may be. And I think sometimes you kind of have to ignore what the like outside noise may be of causing you to doubt yourself, because I can say that yes, every company, every organization wants to check off the box, right, when it comes to diversity and inclusion and equity. But at the end of the day, I also don't think that they're going to take the organization's development and growth and put it, you know, at sort of at risk because they want to check that box. And so I think women really need to just be and feel empowered and realize that, yes, you're just as qualified, and yes, you're more qualified, and yes, you deserve that leadership role, which I think comes down to something that, you know, Sandra mentioned when she was talking about her own campaign, is that people will always say, well, you know, she's a nice girl. I've had people tell me I'm a nice girl, but we're more than just nice girls, right? There's probably a laundry list of capabilities that we have attached to our resume. So I would not allow anyone to cause you to have any level of self-doubt, because if you applied for that position and you were selected for that position, then I know that, and you should know that you deserve that promotion.
And I would just also add, I mean, I think, you know, women, especially Asian American women, we don't, I would say I grew up not taking ownership of who I am or how great I can be, because you grow up, like, for example, even up today, if someone goes, oh, to my mom, oh, you know, your daughter is smart, she go, I don't think so. She could do better. Right. And I think growing up like that, so yes, you get, you know, further up in your career, your professional career, when someone says something like, you know, that you actually do just, you don't take control, you don't proclaim, yes, you know what, I'm in this position because I deserve this position. I'm in this position because I have all the qualifications to be in this position. And so we don't say that. I feel as Asian American females, we were taught not to really say that, because it's not becoming of a woman to say that out loud. You should always just try to be humble. So I don't think in this world being humble is helpful in this situation. You know, every woman, to get to where they are, they work very hard. They work doubly hard as anybody else to get there. So I say, you know, if there is such a criticism, you got to take the words back and go, you know, I'm in this position because I deserve this position.
Thank you, Linda and Sandra. So that leads to our last question for today. So in one sentence, looking back right now, what would you tell your younger self?
What would I tell my younger self? I think I would tell myself that it's okay not to take the traditional path of, I guess, a career, right? You know, I don't think, at least for myself, I ever envisioned I would end up, you know, in this career. But unfortunately, I was very bad at math, so I couldn't be a doctor or an accountant. And I was very shy, so I never thought I could be a lawyer. But I think I would tell myself to not lead my life according to expectations set by other people, right? And just take every opportunity to learn as much as I can from that experience and that opportunity, and from the people around me and all of the teachers and your coworkers and your colleagues, and be confident that you will be then more prepared to, I think, take the next step forward. And just have, I think, a little bit more trust in the process and not stress out, I think, so much in having to think that the minute you graduate from college, you need to know exactly where you're going to be, you know, 10 years from now or 20 years from now.
What to tell my younger self? I'm so old now. I would tell my younger self, yeah, not to stress out so much. I think my younger self, and for the audience here who are young, I mean, there's a lot of stress on, you know, wanting to choose the right path, wanting to choose the right career path. If you make one mistake, that means the whole career is over. I remember that's what I thought when I was younger, going, if I didn't do this, then what I wanted was completely over and I'll never be successful because I made a mistake here or I made a mistake there. So I would tell my younger self, like, you know, you will have setbacks. There'll be failures along the way. There's no perfect journey in this. But if you work hard, and I do want to add, working hard is really important. If you work hard, if you believe in yourself, things will be okay.
Wow. Absolutely. Working hard. That's very important.
Thank you so much, Sandra and Linda, our influential leaders in government, for joining us today, sharing all your wisdoms. As the time is approaching the top of the clock, our panel is about to come to the end as well. So today we have explored female leadership in government, discussed diversity and inclusion, heard personal stories from our speakers, and take away many food for thoughts, I hope. I'm feeling super grateful now. So to our wonderful audience who are with us today, hope the discussion can lead to some breakthrough in your study, in your company or your field, and take the wisdom with you and go make a difference. So before we close, I'd like to just thank the organizer from Tzu Chi Foundations who made today's event possible. They're Katie Chow, Peggy Shen, Freeman Su, Candice Liao, Suing Yang, Annie Chu, and our media team, Fanting, Nancy, Ping Hao, Anik. Also special thanks to the Executive Chamber of the Governor of the State of New York for the incredible support. And if you'd like to know more about us, the Tzu Chi Foundation will welcome you to visit our Tzu Chi Center for Compassion Relief located in Midtown East of Manhattan. We look forward to seeing you there. Okay, so finally, hope you enjoyed tonight. Thank you, Sandra, and thank you, Linda, again. And I'm Joanna Zhang from Tzu Chi Foundation, and happy holidays, and bye for now.
Happy holidays. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.